Hello, everyone. My name is Karina Osuna, and I am the owner and founder of Karina Osuna Financial Coaching. And I'm so excited to get the opportunity to speak with you all today through the Subiendo organization. I'm going to talk to you all about how to win with money. I know right now most of you are in the high school experience and you're getting ready for college, and the next 4 years are so exciting. And it comes with a lot of excitement, but also a lot of responsibilities with money included. So I want to make sure that all of you are set up for success, not only throughout the college experience, but how to prepare for your life after college and for a really successful future. So I'm excited for this opportunity to speak with you all today. We're going to cover a lot of information, so have a pen and paper ready, and let's get started. So let's see who you're speaking with today, right? Who is this voice talking in my head right now? Well, again, my name is Karina Osuna. I'm a proud Texas ex, and I'm a former cheerleader of the University of Texas. I'm originally from San Antonio, and I'm a Texas girl at heart. For the last couple years, I moved across the country to St. Louis, Missouri, and have been here for the last couple years and hope to make my way back to Texas soon. Again, I'm the owner and founder of Karina Osuna Financial Coaching. Once I got out of school, I started my own business, and I work with clients about educating them on money management throughout budgeting, debt elimination, and how to build wealth for a successful future. So again, I'm so excited to be here and have the opportunity to speak with you all today. So let's get started on what you're going to be learning. So first, before we get into that, I just want to share some interesting statistics, because money can sometimes be an exciting topic for people. Others, it might be a little boring, but let me tell you something that might interest you. 78% of workers are living paycheck to paycheck. And that means anybody who's out there in their careers right now and they're working their jobs are working to get their income just to pay their bills and nothing else. They don't have any money left over for fun, for spending, for saving. They just have enough money to cover the bills. That's almost 80% of the entire country living that way. 50% of Americans have less than 1 month's income saved for a rainy day. And I think we can all experience the rainy day from the quarantine from the COVID-19 virus this year. I know millions of people lost their jobs, they were furloughed from their companies, and they didn't even have 1 month of income prepared for this experience. And that's scary. We want to make sure that you guys are prepared for anything that comes your way. This last statistic, I think, is huge and the most important right now as you all are entering into the college experience. Americans owe $1.2 trillion in student loan debt. And that's not even considering any other debts they might have on their plate. That's a lot of money to be owing somebody. We want to make sure that you have less money to owe people and more money for yourself. So with these statistics in mind, you can tell education around your money is huge. The reason why I wanted to be here to speak with all of you is because when I was your age, I didn't get any of this information. I didn't know what was a checking account. I don't know how to manage my savings account. How do I live life with all this money? I don't get how to use it. I didn't know any of this information. And then once I got into the working world, I started receiving this income. And I said, this is nice. What should I do with this? What's the first thing I do with all this money I earned? I want to make sure that when you guys get to that point, you feel confident about a plan with your money and you're going to spend it in the best way for yourself. Some common characteristics I see among clients that I work with. Money creates stress and anxiety for themselves and their families. They might be a little bit embarrassed about the lack of knowledge, which is why they waited so long to seek out help. They're uncertain on how to budget to begin with and budget for their priorities that they have in mind. On average, they have $50,000 to $150,000 in non-mortgage debt. So these are across things like credit cards, medical debt, auto loans, student loans. That's a lot of money for one individual or one family to owe somebody. They have $0 in savings or in retirement investing, and they've got years of formal education to ensure that they obtain a high-income job, but they don't have any money to show for it. So going back to that paycheck-to-paycheck lifestyle where they have their income and their bills, and that's it. I want to make sure that this isn't an experience that you even come close to crossing. I want to make sure that you experience the exact opposite and that you feel comfortable and confident with a plan for your money, or if you have questions, comfortable to ask. So let's talk about what you're going to be learning in this webinar. You're going to learn how to create a budget specifically designed for your life and your goals in mind. Everybody is going to be going on their own paths, their own career directions, living and moving in different places across the country and the world. You might be married right away, you might not, who knows, right? Everybody's going in their own direction, and we want to make sure that we prepare specifically for you. You're going to learn how to build an emergency fund to ensure that you're taken care of when your money is a concern. So if there's ever a situation where, God forbid, you might have a loss of income, you're prepared with money in the bank to make sure that you cover your necessary expenses. We're going to learn how to eliminate debt and how to avoid it in the future. You're going to learn how to invest in your future through retirement and additional investing accounts. And then we're going to talk about how to set effective goals with your money that allow you to live the life that you dream of. I'm sure right now, as you're starting to apply for different schools and colleges and different majors, that you're already starting to dream up of, okay, I'm going to study this major and I'm going to go into this field, and you're already starting to get there. Let's take it up a next level and say, what is that going to look like on a reality day to day with my money? So let's get started. We're going to be talking about quite a bit, like I said. So make sure you have your pen and paper ready to take some notes. So we're going to first talk about creating the budget. If we start anywhere with money, I always say start with the budget. And we're going to talk about why here in a second. A budget allows you to build an intentional plan and purpose with your money. I bet you if I asked all of you, if I were there in person, do you work hard in school? I'm sure all of you would raise your hands and say yes. And as you go through the college experience, will you be working hard in school? Yes. I'm sure you spend hours and hours of your time going to classes, preparing for exams, studying the material to make sure that you know this information, and it takes a lot of work and effort. And as you do that and you get your college degree, you're going to work just as hard to find the job of your dreams. We don't want all this hard work to go to waste. We want to make sure that every dollar is going to an intentional plan and purpose so that you feel good about what you're doing with your money. A budget doesn't limit you, but empowers you to spend money on your priorities. A lot of times people think, oh, well, I'm living on a budget, so I can't do anything. I'm restricted to doing absolutely nothing. But that's not always the case. And sometimes it might be, just depends on your situation and maybe if you're working to get through some debt. But a budget, again, that intentional plan and purpose, keep that in mind. But it's going to empower you to spend the money in the areas that you want to. Having a budget that is easy to keep up with is key to staying on track towards your growth. I have clients all the time where they draw out this fancy budget on the spreadsheet and they have a fabulous plan for their money, and by the end of the month, they executed something completely different because it was just too much number crunching to keep up with. So we're going to talk about maybe some easier tools to keep up with to make sure that you're staying on track each and every month. A budget is a powerful tool that I recommend using for life. I don't care what your income is or how much debt you've paid off or how much money you have in investment accounts. You should always have that intentional plan and purpose with every dollar you earn that you're working hard for. So no matter what's going on with how much money you have in any other place, you want to make sure that you constantly have a plan with the budget. A budget is going to bring awareness to your spending habits. So if you've ever been in a situation for maybe some New Year's resolutions, and I hear all the time, okay, I want to lose 20 pounds, so I'm going to start a food journal, and I'm going to keep track of my eating and all sorts of things, and they start to write down anything that they eat, and all of a sudden they realize that they might be eating more Oreos than they thought they were each week. The budget is going to do the same thing with your money. So it's going to draw more awareness to seeing where your money is going, because a lot of times I have clients who say, Karina, I've got money that comes in with my income, but I have no idea where it goes. It might be going to some bills and other stuff, but I couldn't tell you where else it goes. It disappears by the end of the month. We want to make sure that we're absolutely aware of our spending habits. When you build a budget, you want to keep and build a zero-based budget. And that's what that is that you have your income listed at the top of the page. You've got all your expenses listed in between, and at the very end, your balance should be zero. Again, this is going back to that intentional plan and purpose with your money. So we want to plan for every single dollar. If it's not going to a bill, where is it going to go? We're going to plan for that in this zero-based budget. As you're building this budget, the first thing that you want to start with is what I call your 4 walls. These are your absolute number one priorities, not only priorities, but necessities for each and every month. And that's covering your rent or your mortgage payment for your home, food, Utilities, so things like water, electricity, gas, trash services, and transportation. So these 4 things are absolute necessities that you want to make sure you take care of before anything else at the beginning of every single month. A couple other notes here. Give yourself 3 months for the budget to normalize. And what I mean is this. When I first started budgeting, I created a plan for how much I would spend on food and how much I was going to go spend on having some fun. And I created this great plan. And then by the end of the month, I spent a little bit more in some categories that I didn't know I would probably spend that much in those spaces. And I would beat myself up about, oh my gosh, I spent way too much on my money. This is absurd. I messed up. And really, that was my first experience on working with the budget and trying to understand how much I was spending. Give yourself some grace. Give yourself 3 months or 90 days to really start to draw that awareness and see, what am I spending, where is it going, and how can I adjust it to make sure I'm accomplishing the goals that I have in mind. With the budget, you want to determine what is a want and what is a need. If you ask me, the 4 walls are your absolute needs for human existence, right? Anything else isn't necessarily a need. And we'll have some other things in there that are a need, but consider those wants as well. Do I really need that Starbucks every morning? Or could I just make some coffee at home that's less expensive? So figuring out in that budget, and when you're spending money, do I want this or do I need this? The last thing I want to talk to you guys about with a budget is the different types of budget templates that you can use. There are some apps that you can download on your phone. You can be a traditional spreadsheet person or writing it down pen and paper in your journal. The key here is to find the most effective one for you. Some people do better with pen and paper. Others do better with spreadsheets. Sometimes it's just easier to keep everything on your phone because we're on our phones all the time anyways. For me personally, I love spreadsheets. I just love the visual of drawing out the numbers. But in terms of keeping up with it, like I said, keeping and staying on track with it throughout the month, I have an app on my phone that connects to my bank account, and it uploads every single transaction of money that I spend. And I can just drag it and drop it in each category so that through the month, I can see how much I'm spending in each space, and I don't go overboard on some of these categories. So the key here is to make sure that you find the resource that is best and most effective for you. So let's take a look at an example of the budget. And before we even get started, I want you to ask yourself a couple of questions. What will I be responsible for in terms of paying? Will I have parents or guardians helping me out with my money? Will I be receiving any financial assistance via scholarships, grants, or other resources? Once you know this information, you'll have a better idea of how much money you're going to have each month and where it's all going. So if you do have assistance from a family member or a friend that's going to help you out, talk to them about how much per month they're going to be able and willing to give you. And that way we can set up a better plan for your budget. So let's go through this example. Assume that you have $2,500 as your income for the month. Let's start going by priority number 1 in let's say the top 4 priorities, right, with the 4 walls. So your rent or your dorm expenses is going to be number 1. Got to have a roof over your head. Utilities is going to be number 2. You've got to have the lights on, got to have the chargers for your computer for your studying, and you got to have gas and other utility resources to make sure that your living situation is okay. Number 3, you've got to have food on the table every month. We cannot be going without food, especially how much energy your brains are going to be using as you're studying. You've got to make sure that you're feeding yourself right and having food on the table. And number 4, transportation. So this one can look different from year to year. I know my first year in school, I didn't even take my car to school. I left it at home, again, from San Antonio, and I was in school in Austin. And I lived on campus in the dorms, and I rode the bus anywhere that I needed to go. So I didn't really have money to spend in transportation. I didn't have money to spend on gas, but maybe you might be living a little bit further off campus, or you're going to have your car to be able to go to and from home. So you want to make sure that you're covered in the space of having gas for your car. Outside of the 4 walls, medical needs and insurance needs are the next priority. So if you have a medical prescription that you need to be taking every month, or if you're going to be responsible for the renter's insurance for your living expenses, you want to make sure that you have that coverage in place. After that is going to be anything related to school. So once you've got these first 6 things in place, then you're going to say, what books and tools and resources do I need for schools? Maybe you're going to be taking a lab and you need to go buy a lab coat, or you need a specific book. You want to make sure that you're covered and prepared for the semester. And lastly, after that is going to be any debt, and we'll talk about that in a second. But as you've listed out all these items, once you add them up, you've got $2,210 that you've spent. So where does this other $290 go? Well, after we talk about these other subject matters, we'll see what the best fit is for you, but there's multiple different options. So let's talk about a couple things here in a second. So we're going to talk about the emergency fund. Like I said, step number 1 is building the budget. Step number 2 is making sure that we're prepared for emergencies. So if I was here in person, could you raise your hand and say, oh yeah, I've definitely had a situation where I got a nail in my tire and I had to get my tire replaced, or my dog had to be taken to the emergency vet room. I mean, who knows? The list goes on and on with everyday life emergencies, right? There's always something unexpected that can come our way and we have no idea. And when that happens, I don't want money to be a stressful situation, because it's already an emergency. It's already stressful, right? Let's make sure that we have the money on hand to take care of that. So as you're building this emergency fund, where I suggest getting started is building what I call a starter emergency fund. That's going to be $1,000, and you're going to put this in your savings account for emergencies only. If I can repeat, emergencies only. We never want to be in a situation where, ooh, I've got $1,000 in my savings account. I really was wanting to go on this vacation to the beach, so I'm going to go ahead and plan that because I have the money, and then all of a sudden, you need to replace all your tires and you don't have any cash on hand to pay for that. So starting with that $1,000 emergency fund is going to help cover those everyday emergencies. With this in place, you'll be able to cover living expenses as you start to build this up. So after you do the starter emergency fund, I want you guys to save up 3 to 6 months of expenses. And again, dependent upon your risk level is what I have written down here. And what I mean by that is, what's the risk of your income being kept or lost? Do you have a job that's completely commission-based and you don't know what your income is? Do you have a parent or legal guardian helping you out, or do you not have a parent or legal guardian helping you out? Do you have scholarships and grants, or do you not have scholarships and grants? It really depends on the risk of your incomes in terms of if you save up 3, 4, 5, or 6 months. But somewhere in between there, determine your level of risk and at least have 3 months of living expenses saved up in case for emergencies after you've got that $1,000 starter emergency fund in place. When I say 3 to 6 months of expenses, what does that include? That includes everything within that 4 walls. So your rent, your utilities, your food, your transportation. You also are going to want to include any insurance that you are responsible for paying and other necessities. Like I said, if you have medical necessities you have each and every month, or being prepared for the next semester if you're going to be taking classes the next semester in school. Again, this emergency fund should cover expenses from an unexpected income loss, but it should not cover the vacations, the parties, the fun spending, the trip to Dallas for OU. We'll make sure to save that in another category, but having this emergency fund in place after you get the budget set in stone is going to be really helpful when everyday life happens. Okay, we got the budget in place. We've set up our emergency fund. Now let's talk about debt. Remember those statistics that I mentioned at the beginning of this? 78% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, $1.2 trillion that Americans owe in student loans alone. This is the number one thing that's going to be stealing from you preparing from your future. If we're constantly having to pay off the past, how can we ever expect to save for anything that's coming in the future, right? Debt is no good. We do not want to have this. You want to get rid of it as much as you can. Debt allows you to take on more than what you can afford. This I see especially when it comes to being able to apply for credit cards, right? They allow you to have a limit of money and spend money before you even have the money. We want to make sure that we're spending money that we already have, not money that we're waiting to come, right? Monthly expenses are designed, or I'm sorry, not monthly expenses, monthly payments are designed to be small to prevent you from gaining traction and allowing the interest to grow. So anytime you borrow money, it's going to cost you extra money, and that's called interest. So a percentage of that interest, or percentage of that loan, excuse me, is going to be tacked on to what you borrowed, and you're going to owe that at the end of the loan, or the end of the credit card. So if you borrowed a $2,000 student loan and the interest rate was, for an example, 3%, you're going to owe $2,000 and an additional 3%. So here's the other thing about debt. When you have the cash to pay for it, you pay that exact amount. But when you take it out before you have the money, you have to pay that exact amount and more. We don't want to have to pay more money on these things if we don't have to. Let's talk a little bit more about why we would want to eliminate debt. Debt payments are why it's so difficult to make progress again for saving and saving for your future. It makes you very unable, or makes the inability to save and invest as much as you could for your future. And it creates more stress and anxiety. Any client that I work with comes to me stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, sometimes hopeless, which is a really strong word in this space, because they have so much debt they can barely see the light at the end of the tunnel, that they owe so much money that they don't know how they're going to come up with the funds to pay all of this off and in a reasonable amount of time. We don't want any more stress and anxiety, right? We might already have plenty of that when it comes to applying for schools and making sure you're passing all your classes and getting into the school that you want to. So let's lower the levels of stress by lowering the amount of debt that we have. If you do have debt or plan to be taking out student loans, let's talk about how we can get rid of it as fast as possible. So the process that I follow and that I preach when it comes to eliminating debt is called the debt snowball. If you've ever been to a place with the snow and you start clumping it up on the ground and you're rolling it into the powder, all of a sudden you have the base and the makings of a snowman when it started with just a small handful of snow. As you start with the smallest thing, and it just starts growing larger and larger and larger over time. So how does that apply to money? Let's talk about it. You're going to first list out all of your debts, smallest to largest. The smallest debt balance is going to be at the top, all the way down to the largest at the bottom. You're going to pay the minimums on every single one of these debts to stay current, because if we get behind, it could be a messy situation, which that could be a whole conversation in itself, but you definitely do not want to get behind on any bills that you owe. Any extra money that you have beyond necessary expenses is going to be going towards the smallest debt, and you're going to pay extra on that. And we'll look at an example here in a second. Once you start paying extra on the smallest, it's going to eventually be at a zero balance. You're going to have eliminated that debt, and you're just going to use that income to go into the next one and go into the next one and go into the next one. So let's look here at a visual example of what this debt snowball looks like. So here's an example. We've got a credit card, a student loan, and an auto loan. Right? We've got a minimum payment of $520, $320, and $420 on each of these. So in total, we're paying $790 worth of debt payments each month just for these three items alone. And we have the balances here on the right. We owe a total of $40,000. But remember that extra $290 I remember brought up in the budgeting area? This is where we're going to use that extra money towards paying on this debt. Like I said, this extra $290 could go towards all sorts of categories. It could go towards more fun. It could go towards saving. It could go towards investing. But what we want to do first is prioritize getting out of debt. The faster we pay off yesterday, the sooner we can prepare for tomorrow. So instead of paying just the minimum of $50, we will pay $340 to eliminate that credit card debt even faster. All right, we've talked about quite a bit, so take a deep breath here. We've talked about the budget, we've talked about the emergency fund, we talked about getting out of debt, and this is all happening in this order. Budget comes number 1. Emergency fund is number 2. Eliminating debt is number 3. Now we're here in investing. And investing is talking about planning and saving money for your future in certain types of accounts that grow interest. Imagine that. You actually earn interest when you're investing money. When you're paying off debts, you're paying interest. So this is a really exciting subject. It has a lot of funky terminology sometimes, so I want to break it down as much as possible and prepare you guys for this, because once you get out of school and you get a job, it is very possible that your company is going to offer these benefits to you. And these benefits can include retirement accounts, they can include insurance, they can include all sorts of different packages. But a lot of times you're going to see a retirement benefit included in your new job. And I want to make sure you know what you're looking at when you get there. So we're going to talk about the difference between mutual funds versus stocks and bonds, Roth versus traditional accounts, and my recommendations in terms of how and what to invest. But let's take a look at what these options might be when you start working. So when you get your new job and they hand you a booklet of benefits and they say, we have a 401k that offers a match. And you're like, what the heck does that mean? So let's go over these options. The 401k, the 403b, the TSP, or the thrift savings plans. These are all types of accounts that hold your investments. So think of the 401k, the 403b, or the TSP as a cookie jar, and the mutual funds or the stocks and bonds are the cookies that sit within the jar. They're the actual investment. So these are just accounts that hold this information for you, and they all function slightly differently. And they all are offered from different organizations. Most corporations offer a 401k. For the 403b, you see it a lot in the public education system if you plan on being a professor or a teacher later down the road, or maybe a self-employed minister. The TSP, you see a lot for United States Civil Service and the uniform services. So it just depends on where you're working and what type of account you might be offered. But the 401k is the most common one I see, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. And those are all three options offered by your employer. Down below where I have personal investing, this is going to be other retirement accounts or potential education accounts. And you could even do investment accounts that aren't designated towards anything specifically, but we'll look at these two options here. So we went through the employer type accounts. For personal investing, you can invest in an account called a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. So going back over here, what's a Roth versus traditional? What does that even mean? Roth is just a word that stands for after tax dollars. A traditional account means before tax dollars. Take that down on notes, because for me that took a long time to absorb. So what do I mean by after tax dollars? If you're investing into a Roth IRA, this is going to be money from your paycheck that you take home. If you're investing in a traditional IRA, this is going to be money prior to getting your paycheck that you take home at the end of the day. So you're going to be paying taxes on a traditional account right now, on a Roth IRA right now, because it's already taxed after tax dollars. With a traditional account, you don't have to pay taxes just yet. You will pay taxes on that later down the road when you're ready to use this money for retirement. So that's the difference between Roth versus traditional. Roth, after tax dollars; traditional, before tax dollars. The type of education accounts, the common ones that I see are a 529 or an ESA. So again, this is looking far in the future, years and years down the road. If you plan on maybe having children one day and you want to help save and pay for their college education, investing in a 529 or an ESA can be a really, really great option to make sure that you have the money for college, because college is expensive and we want to make sure that we cover all of our bases. The key here with the personal investing accounts is that you talk to an investment professional who can walk through all these options and talk to you about the different regulations with each one, because they have different contribution amounts, what they can specifically be used for, when you can start using this money. So you want to make sure that you talk to an investment professional to get all the ins and outs of what these accounts look like. So how much should we invest? The more money, the better, right? But there's a couple things that we have to take care of first. We want to make sure that emergency fund is in place. We want to make sure that all of our debt is taken care of. So if you still have debt on your hands, we want to make sure we do that first prior to signing up for investing. Take care of yesterday, and then we can start preparing for the future. But when you're ready, I suggest investing about 15% of your gross or before tax dollars of your gross income. So let's say, for instance, that you get a take-home paycheck of $4,000. And if you calculate 15% of that, that's going to be about $600. And that's after tax dollars. So we're going to invest a little bit more than that to make sure that we cover that 15%. Where and how should you do this? If you look here at the bottom where I have options to consider, your number one option is a match, which we'll talk about what that is. Number two is a Roth. Number three is a traditional account. So when I say the words invest up to a match, sometimes employers will offer you a match option, meaning if you contribute X percent, they will match up to that percentage and give you free money. Yes, I said it, free money that hardly ever comes around. And this is one of those very rare instances. So when you see match, that means free money, and that means your eyes should light up, gold stars should be going around it, and we want to go towards that match option. Once you've invested up to that percentage, because they're not going to match up to everything you invest. They might match up to, say, 3%. That's a very common amount. And even if you contributed more, they're only going to match up to that percentage that they say. So you want to first invest up to that match, and let's say that's 3%. The next step we're going to do is go to the Roth IRA account. So again, this is going to be after tax dollars. We'd rather take care of paying our taxes now and not have to worry about it later when we're retiring. But with the Roth IRA or with a Roth account, typically you can contribute way less money per year than you would in a traditional account. So once you go to that Roth, if you max that out, which right now Roth IRAs are maxed out at $6,000 per year that you can contribute, and that's about $500 per month. But if you've already done your 3% and you're maxing out your Roth, and you're maybe only at 10% per month for your contributions, one, great for you, you're making a great income. Two, you're like, okay, well, I'm already maxing out my Roth and I'm already up to the match, where else do I go? At that point, you're going to go back to your company option or back to that traditional account to finish off up to that 15%, because you'll be able to contribute a lot more per year and per month towards that account. Again, I know this is a lot of information. All of the words can be a lot of jargon at first. Take some time to review this. Take down some notes. We'll talk about some questions here in a second. Okay, the last thing that I want to cover is setting goals. And this might be something that you want to do before you even touch the budget. Like I said, budget has got to be first. We've got to have a plan. We've got to have that emergency fund. That's number two. We've got to pay off all of our debt. That's number three. We want to invest and save for the future. That's number four. But having goals in place of where you want to go is so, so important, because if you're running around and you don't have a sense of direction, we might not make any sense of progress. But if you have specific goals in mind, you can have specific actions in place to get to that goal and make sure that you accomplish that and you know where you're looking to go. But when it comes to money, when it comes to your career, like, Karina, I'm only in high school, or I'm just getting started with college, like, this is a lot. You're talking about retiring, and I've got years before that happens. But I can tell you this, the clients that I've worked with, all of them, but specifically my clients who are their 50s, 60s, and 70s say, God, I wish I prepared for these things years later. It's like I blinked and all of a sudden I'm 7 years old and I still don't have anything saved. We want to make sure that we're prepared to, again, we don't want to be stressed with money at all. We already have plenty of that in the world. We don't need any more stress added on. So the more prepared we are with our money, the more exciting this life is going to look. So here are some questions and things to consider, whether you write them down in a journal, you document them in a spreadsheet, communicate these with somebody you love or care about too. Anytime you write a goal down on paper or you tell somebody, it's a lot more likely that you're going to commit to that and get to that goal. So here are some questions. When do I want to be debt-free? When do I want to have an emergency fund saved? When do I want to start investing for retirement? How do I want my life to look? What communities do I want to give back to? What are my biggest dreams and that I want to live out, and how can I prepare to get there? What kind of legacy do I want to leave for my children and the next generation? These are huge, huge questions, and it's not an answer that you might develop in 2 minutes, right? But these are things to keep in mind as, again, you're starting to get prepared for a really, really exciting time. College is a lot of fun, and it's there to prepare you for your future. And these are the things that are going to be happening right when you get out of school. So start to think and brainstorm about them now, write it down in your journal, and let's get to it and accomplish these goals. Awesome. You guys, I want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. This was so much fun. I know that money can be a confusing topic. It can be overwhelming to learn all of this. And I wanted to make sure I could make it as simple as possible. But I know that you still might have questions. And I want to be sure that you know I'm available and I'm here for you. So if you have questions or if you want to get in touch with me, here are a couple ways how. You can head over to my website and you can book a complimentary consultation just to have a conversation and ask me some questions. I love to talk and help people. So don't be hesitant to schedule a consultation. The second thing is just shoot me an email. If you went through this whole lesson and you're like, oh my goodness gracious, I've got lots of notes here. I don't know what this word means. Where do I even begin? Let's talk about it. I know that this can be an overwhelming task and space to take on our own, and that's what I'm here for. I am here to help, and I'm here to cheer you on. I'm so excited for all of you as you start to venture in the college experience, and thank you so, so much for listening. Again, my name's Karina, and hook 'em horns. Talk to you all soon.